Hello, everybody. How are you doing? I feel like every time I say hello, it makes John laugh really, really hard.
Oh my God.
I would love to know why, John.
Hey Sean, how are you?
I'm doing well.
It's really good to see you, man. I'm glad you made it through the storm okay.
I am also glad that you survived. Just take a moment to wish everybody Godspeed, safe journey. If you don't know, we're from the state of New Jersey. We are in New Jersey. I have family in the Toms River, Seaside Heights area. So it's a tough time to be a New Jersey resident right now.
Yeah, a
And
lot of people just getting their heat back after over a week with cold and no electric. A lot of dark, a lot of candles.
it's true. A lot of good customer service going around.
Great customer service. Lots of kudos to a lot of PSE&G and other entities that came to help out to saw up trees and all kinds of stuff.
That's right. And let's hopefully the good service train keeps rolling in New Jersey and Staten Island and New York City and all the other areas, so everybody
Absolutely.
gets back to a normal way of life.
Yeah, I know. Just yesterday, there were people who just got their power back, which is amazing to me. I mean, I was without for maybe 3 or 4 days. And how long were you out?
36 hours.
Yeah, I was. It was cold, but it was not that bad, especially compared to people who work with us who just got their power back like yesterday.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty amazing as far inland as we were, how negatively we were impacted in this area. Uh, Also had the highest wind speeds out of anywhere else in the storm area, which was weird, up to 70 miles an hour, which is definitely an explanation for the devastation.
Yeah, never saw so many downed trees as I saw from this storm. It was
No,
crazy.
definitely not. So let's get back into the groove. Let's get people back on the normal track. And so tonight we've decided to have our big Microsoft episode. We've been
Yay!
we've been talking about doing this for a while. We wanted to wait until Windows 8 launched and the Microsoft Surface launched, and then we felt it would be a good time to talk about the new Microsoft and the direction they're heading in and how it impacts customers. And so before we really dive into the new, let's talk about the old. Now, John, I know you've made your opinion known many, many times in the past that you, at one time, were a big Microsoft supporter, and then you apparently had a change of heart, and you are now really not a big fan. I don't know if you're a hater, but I know you're not a fan.
I wouldn't say I'm a hater. I would say we'll start with the beginning.
Yeah, let's do that.
So my first computer, my first computer was a Sinclair 2000, and it had like 16K RAM, and I learned BASIC, and I learned on a TI 99 4A, and had a lot of computers. And then when I was in college, I made an investment of like probably $1,500 into an AST computer. You remember AST, Sean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So, and that was running Windows. I guess it was 95. Um, and it was exciting. It was an exciting time, and I became dedicated to computers. And before that, I spent some time on Windows 3.1 because I had a drafting class where it was computer-aided drafting in high school and stuff. But it was like basic, and then it was like a brief introduction to computers through this drafting class. And then in college, I had a design class where there were Macs, and we were doing illustration on Macs. And I just got really excited and got my own computer. But the computer I chose was a Windows machine, and I just fell in love with Windows. I was a big fan of Internet Explorer, and it was a great time. They were making great strides in their applications. They were top of the world. And then I got introduced to Linux and was a part of some groups where open source was really the thing, and that's where my introduction happened. And I remember being upset that people in the group hated Microsoft. I just didn't get it. You know, it was foreign to me that somebody would be so against such a great service, right? And I'm still not to a point where I'm like, you know, down with Microsoft, really. I think that for a lot of people, they provide great service, great functionality. It's a software-based interface that people can jump into really quickly and get used to. I have personal preferences that are not Microsoft. I prefer open source because philosophically it's a different way of thinking. And I want to be able to do anything. I don't want to be restricted by the software that I use. But I understand why Microsoft exists. I understand why they develop the software the way that they do. But so, philosophically, we have differences. That being said, I think that generally speaking, they make good, strong products that are usable. I think that they're affordable. I think that nobody could question their success. You know, they are the basis of computers as we know it in history. So, you know, as far as general computing for the average person is concerned, that's where most people start, is Windows. So that being said, a couple things have happened. You know, the mobile revolution happened, and iPads happened, and iPhones happened, and Android, you know, and of course, you know, I have my preferences there too. So now that Microsoft is coming in, as they have done in the past, and sort of coming up the rear and doing some interesting things, it remains to be seen whether the story is over. And I'm sure that you would say it's not over at all, because you are definitely pro-Microsoft, and I understand that. So I've touched everything. I will use whatever gets the job done best. But for me, most often, it's open source software on very often Macintosh or Apple hardware. And in the mobile area, it's, you know, Google. And, you know, I'm very cloud-based. Most of my recorded material is in the cloud. And so I find less and less of a connection with a desktop machine. I'm on a desktop machine now, but that's unique. I'm usually on a laptop or a mobile device. And so I'm really happy that Microsoft is making an entry. I personally am not going to probably pursue that platform because I've invested in another set of platforms. I'm going to need to know it because other people are going to use it, and I'm a technologist, and I need to support people. But generally speaking, you know, my differences are philosophical. It's not really about what the best hardware is or the best software. It's ideological.
I kind of had a similar path to you in Microsoft, in the sense that, you know, my first computer was a VIC-20. I learned BASIC, not probably really learning it. I mean, I was 2 years old when I received my VIC-20 as a Christmas gift, and I would play games on it, but, you know, I would mess around in BASIC as I got older. You know, and then I was actually first exposed to Logo on an Apple IIe. Was my first real PC experience.
And incidentally, you know that has made a recurrence in today's computing for kids and programming in an application called Scratch. You familiar with Scratch?
That's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah, there's some really interesting things that are happening now that are parallels to what we learned with Turtle and, you know, those kinds of things. Is it? What did you just say? What was the application you just?
Logo.
Logo, yeah. where it had a turtle that went around the screen, right?
Right, RT90,
Yeah,
FD30.
yeah, 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 right.
Yeah.
So uh, you ought to look at Scratch. Scratch is really cool. I mean, you can do some interesting things with it, but it's essentially programming and circuitry, on-screen circuitry for kids who want to know about programming. I'm actually really excited. Jack, my son Jack, who just turned 8, is getting to the age now where he could really get into that and be excited about it. And then there's Arduino and other things going on. But anyway, you just said you were talking about turtles, and it just reminded me of, there's really cool things still going on with that.
That's good to know. Because Logo was actually a really huge part of my early childhood computing. I was involved with a special club. It was me and one other kid. That's how special the club was. Where we got this special Lego set that actually was a robotic turtle, and there was an interface you could hook up to Logo, and the commands that you would type into Logo would not only draw the turtle on the screen, but it would move the robot as well. It was pretty incredible. So, my love of computers started very young, and so, used Apple IIe in a command line environment, to do Logo. Then it was DOS on some IBM 88s, and then Windows didn't enter my world until 1994 when we got our first family computer, and it was Windows 3.1.1. We were beta testers for 95, and I was I don't know if I was really passionate about Microsoft at that time. I always felt more comfortable at the DOS prompt, basically up until the release of 95. And, and I thought Windows 95 was good. I liked it. I don't know if I really loved it. XP, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. 98, I had very bad experiences with in college. XP reinvigorated my love of Windows again. Was solid. And then I got kind of felt like Microsoft was getting a little stagnant. Like things were not really, there really wasn't much innovation going on. There was a lot of disappointment. I started actually growing a little bit restless and was exploring other open source operating system like BIOS and FreeBSD. I never really dove into Linux at that point because I felt like Linux really wasn't accessible to me at that time. I felt like it really took a...
It was rough around the corners for a very long time. I mean, Ubuntu has done... We'll talk about Ubuntu at some point, but...
Yeah. And so I kind of was this aimless soul wandering the wasteland of computing, not really happy with what was going on with Windows, but definitely not happy with what was going on with Apple. That was the era OS 8, OS 9, and those were just complete travesties of the computing world, if you ask me. They were not anything good. Vista came out. I jumped on that, thinking that was going to be a new gateway for me. That did not pan out the way it did. And then, around this time, too, I was getting into smartphone usage. I never even considered Windows Mobile for a second. I had friends who were using Windows Mobile, and I was a Palm guy.
Yeah, I was a Palm guy too. It's sad.
And hardcore. I mean, almost literally to the end. Before the launch of WebOS, I had a Palm device, and when WebOS launched, I switched to Android. But so Microsoft really only entered into my life because of the Xbox and my operating system on my computer. Only really loved the Xbox, but didn't really love the operating system.
So the thing about your experience with Xbox and gaming is that my gaming experience is nil. I mean, I use Steam basically, and I had a couple PC games, and really have not had a console since an Atari 2600. I had a PS2 for a little while, a used PS2, but even that was you use it and it's this is not for me, and then I moved on. But I just saw that for the holidays, Best Buy is going to offer an Xbox, some big bundle for $200, and I was like, that'd be kind of fun. But I don't have any experience with that, and I feel like that has a huge influence on your feelings about Microsoft.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, I mean, I was actual when the Xbox was announced, the original Xbox. It was, in my opinion, as someone who's been, like I said, a gamer since the age of 2 years old. I mean, I've been gaming legitimately since that young. You know, I've owned pretty much every system that's ever been released since 1983, and I looked at Microsoft's entry into home console as a Me Too thing, and it made me angry. I was not happy about it. I thought it was bullshit, and you know, knowing what the Xbox was made up of component-wise at the time, I mean, it was this huge, literally this huge box that weighed about 10 to 12 pounds, and there was actually a warning in the manual about it falling and killing children, small children, in the manual. So, you know, there was a lot of things about the games weren't really good, but late in the Xbox, the original Xbox is life, like probably the last 3 or 4 years, last 3 years that it was on the market. My girlfriend bought me one for Christmas with a copy of Halo 2, and the rest was history from that point on. And that's where I started to see there was definite in it, like the rest of Microsoft. There was no innovation going on. That was maintaining the status quo, both in the mobile sphere, the software sphere, the operating system sphere. It was disappointing. So if you were a Microsoft fanboy, which I really wasn't at that time, it was a disappointing time to be one. But there was definite innovation going on with the Xbox, and you could see that the Xbox was the first device that Microsoft had that was kind of fulfilling the Bill Gates' dream of a set-top box, you know, that would sit in your family room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also interesting to consider Bill Gates as a personality behind this organization too, because I actually have sort of hated Bill Gates, and then, you know, with his philanthropy, his pledge to essentially reduce his wealth to nil and give away his fortunes in order to help mankind, like, how can you argue with that? You know what I mean? So, I mean, talking completely aside from the technology, there's also this huge, you know, Steve Jobs-like figure in Bill Gates who essentially was pushing proprietary software as a movement versus open source as a movement. I can't agree with that at all, but I can't argue with his want to help, you know, kill malaria, for example.
Right.
Anyway.
I mean, I've always looked at Bill Gates as someone that I have idolized basically my whole life as a technologist.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I mean, I'm not someone that really agrees with proprietary software either. You know, I'm someone that does support open standards. And I think Microsoft's attitude towards proprietary for the sake of proprietary has evolved over the years and has improved for the better. And
they definitely have changed their stance just a bit after Bill Gates stepped down.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a direct correlation or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
But, you know, it was, I guess, around the time that Bill Gates left that things started to, you could see that there was new things going on with Microsoft. They were starting to branch out into the web applications sphere, you know, finally killing off MSN and moving into what they called Live, where all these different web applications, you know, Hotmail got a refresh. They just started a news reader, you know, like an iGoogle type thing. You know, there was all kinds of different stuff going on. But I always felt like there were some of those things that they, you know, MSN Search at the time was another thing that was competing with Google. They were playing catch up in every one of those products. And a lot of them, you could see that there were good ideas here and there, but the product as a whole was never really a fully realized product. You know, like it was always half-baked. And
they have products now, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, that are phenomenal. I mean, it's hard to compete with their maps, for example, and
Right.
yet they are not at the top of the game at all. They are not the preferred solution for maps by most people. But I think it has so much to do with a lack of knowledge and ignorance on the part of the general public of all the things that you can do in, I guess it's Bing Maps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, to my renewed interest in things Microsoft really didn't kick in until Windows 7 was released. And Windows 7 basically was a mea culpa for all things Windows Vista. And it was around this time that too that Microsoft started to consolidate its efforts into, you know, getting rid of the Windows Live branding, shutting down a lot of the extraneous services that were not really fully realized or were underutilized, and they kind of consolidated, just like Google does all the time. They shut down different services that are not being used. And when
Yeah.
they started to do that, they started to double up their efforts in the products that remained, and you could see that the quality was improving. And
Yeah,
at the same
survival
time,
of the fittest. Google definitely does that, and Microsoft does too, for sure.
yeah, and I think that's a huge advantage, not a huge advantage, but I think that's a really awesome thing for a company to take a hard look at itself and to be able to phase products out. You know, because I feel like a lot of technology organizations, not just companies, they will just keep a service going for the sake of keeping it going, and files or Windows Live Spaces. And they realized, hey, we're not a social media company, and we're not a blogging company. So when they sunsetted the Windows Live Spaces service, and do you know what everybody was pushed into by Microsoft?
No.
WordPress.
Seriously?
Yeah, man.
What,
There
they
was a
had like
strategic.
they
There
had
was a
an export function?
yeah. Basically, what happened was Microsoft announced they were shutting down the ISS version of WordPress as well. So there
Wow.
was some kind of partnership forged between Microsoft and WordPress, and that was pretty awesome to do that, because WordPress is definitely way better than Windows Live Spaces was.
And I mean, yeah, that's surprising. It almost seems like a little bit of a nod against Google to me, like the sort of thing where they could have said, "Well, we'll just export you to Blogger," but they would never do that.
No, well, I mean, I think that would help legitimize WordPress for business use. I think, though.
I don't
It's
know. I don't know. It. Oh, I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they haven't corrupted the WordPress product in any
No, no,
way.
no, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, I didn't know until you just said it that WordPress was able to be run effectively on IIS.
I run it right now.
Wow.
It's amazing. We'll have to talk offline about that someday, because it's pretty interesting. But anyway, so Microsoft, like I said, they started to consolidate. They started to innovate again, and the Xbox 360 was launched around the same time, and there was definitely an increased innovation in terms of the gaming space there, with being one of the first consoles to offer a digital storefront for the purchasing of digital goods, whether it's a film or a video game, or downloading additional content for a game. These ideas, you know, may have existed in other forms on other platforms, but Microsoft was the first to tie it all together into a single cohesive experience, and it completely revolutionized the gaming world as we know it. And Sony ended up implementing the same thing. Nintendo, I mean, everybody ended up playing catch up with Microsoft for a change instead of Microsoft playing catch up with them. And then, you know, Microsoft started to release products like the Zune, and they rebranded the Windows Phone. And it was when I kind of jumped on board the Windows Phone platform, which replaced the old Windows Mobile, that I started to realize that there is definitely something really huge on the horizon with Microsoft, because Windows Phone 7 was radically different than any other mobile OS. And you could tell that there was a little, that itself was a little half-baked as well.
Was
But
Windows Phone 7 where the what was formerly known as the Metro interface was introduced? Okay.
yeah, it was introduced for the first time through Windows Phone 7, right? The concept of a live tile and such were launched there. And so basically, like I said, Windows 7 made me a believer again, but Windows Phone 7 got me very passionate about what was going on at Microsoft, to the point where it awakened this beast within me that was just so excited to see what was going to be coming around the corner. And, still paying attention to what Apple was doing, still paying attention to what Google was doing, using a Droid device for 2 years. I've been a supporter of the Android ice cream sandwich and Jelly Bean OSs. I think that's huge. That's a huge turn in the right direction for Google. Never really appreciating what Apple was doing. And then finally, we know that Windows 8 was on the horizon, and there were major changes going on at Microsoft. They also launched a Microsoft Store, which some people would say is a carbon copy of the Apple Store, in the sense that it was a one-stop shop for all things Windows and Microsoft, and to the point where they almost even look very similar. Hardwood floors, bright white walls, people in T-shirts and jeans with lanyard name tags, the whole nine. You could see that Microsoft was positioning itself to be a direct marketer of products as opposed to a marketer of platforms. And so this was a fundamental change. And Windows 8 was announced. We saw they were getting away from the traditional desktop experience. And with Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8, the two operating system environments would be converged for the first time.
Okay.
So people who are users of the phone or a computer will have the same experience regardless. So the first company to ever do that. I think they're ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah, definitely not having a monolithic experience. If you are an iPhone user or a Mac OS X user, you're having a different experience. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's definitely not monolithic or a streamlined, similar experience between the two OSs.
Right.
And certainly not the case. The closest thing Google has to an operating system is Chrome.
Right.
And while Chrome does exist on Android, it certainly is not the same thing from. You can be on two Android devices and have a different experience. So
very true.
Yeah, definitely not the same.
No. So that's how I got to the point where I'm at with Microsoft, basically, in the sense that it was a long journey. It wasn't something that's always been instilled in me, and for the most part, I'm very passionate about what's going on right now. And recently, to shift the focus again, I went to a Microsoft store for the first time 2 weeks ago.
Where'd you go?
I went to the one in the Freehold Mall in Freehold, New Jersey.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people in my tech circles have visited.
And I gotta say, I've been to many Apple stores over the years. I think it's a pretty good retail experience at the Apple Store. I think it's probably the best place for anyone to go and buy technology in terms of trustworthiness of the salespeople, the level of help that you can receive at a store. I mean,
just the fact that they're properly trained, just the fact that they have something like a genius level, quote unquote genius, that they don't just hand out the name tag when you sign up to work there. You have to achieve that.
Right.
I despite whatever feelings I have about Apple, and I certainly don't have bad feelings about Apple. I have preferences, but I don't have any qualms about their stores. Their stores are beautiful, fantastic, clean, well-driven. You get service when you expect it. There are lots of products there. I've never been turned away. I always left happy. That I don't have anything bad to say about Apple stores.
And neither did I until I went to a Microsoft store. And I gotta say, I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I mean, I knew it was going to be a showcase of all things Windows, all things Microsoft, but I received a level of one-to-one customer interaction that, like I said, I've been in Apple stores, I've purchased products at Apple stores, I've had the one-to-one interactions at Apple stores, I've utilized the Genius Bar. What I experienced at the Microsoft store is the next generation of the technology retail experience, in the sense that the Apple Store is version 1.0, Microsoft Store is version 2.0, and
so this sounds like there is a division happening between, in the same way that you have a different experience. We've talked many times about Wawa versus 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven is sort of like old school, and Wawa is, and Quick Check and that ilk are sort of the new way.
Right.
It sounds like the same thing is happening in technology retail. Why does Best Buy still exist?
That's an amazing question. I just read some more articles this week about what's going on with Best Buy. I don't know. I don't know how they exist. I don't know why they exist. I mean, I know I still go there every once in a while.
Is it the same thing as, like, why, if there's such a thing as, like, I'm a fan of Target. I like Target as a brand.
So do I.
But Walmart still exists, and it seems more obvious why Walmart exists versus, and there are plenty of things that you can get at Best Buy that you cannot get at either an Apple store or a Microsoft store.
Absolutely.
But part of the benefit of going to an Apple store or a Microsoft store, as I'm sure you're going to explain to us in detail, is the increase in service that you get. It's not only a warehouse. It's a small warehouse at best. It's really about that opportunity to talk with somebody of a knowledgeable nature for free, essentially, to consult you about what direction to go in and to help you with your purchase, which does not happen at Best Buy. Best Buy is essentially a warehouse with registers.
That's a great analogy for what it is, because that's what it's become. I mean, I'm sure there was a time where you would get good advice from. I got good advice about my high definition TV that I bought from Best Buy, but we're talking 6 years ago. The Best Buy of today is.
It's more common knowledge now, and there's more tools to find out everything you need to know about those tools, and we're all becoming more and more familiar with the online tools that give us that information.
Exactly.
So Best Buy just, they need to innovate or get out.
Right. And there's clear innovation going on at the Microsoft store. And so what happened was, and let me tell you about these innovations. I walk in the store, and I went there with one particular purpose, and that was I bought myself a Microsoft Surface, but I didn't have the keyboard. Because
you're talking about what do they call the keyboard thing?
There's the touchpad and then the type pad.
What are they referred to as?
That's what I think. There's the touch type pad, and then there's like the type pad.
I thought they called the add-on things something like a click or something.
Well, they make a click. I'm looking up the terminology right now.
But just to be clear, we're talking about the cover that also has functionality in it.
It's the touch cover and the type cover. Yes, they're both the two covers that provide keyboard functionality to the tablet. So I purposely did not buy one because I didn't know if I wanted the flat one that we see in the commercial, or did I want the one that provided a traditional keyboard experience. And so that was my goal.
Keyboards, though, one just happens to be flat, and one has like a surface, a texture to it.
One is completely flat with outlines of keys, and the other one is just like a laptop keyboard with push-down keys.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know which way to go, and there were no reviews at the time, so I just said, you know what? I haven't been to a Microsoft store. I'm going to go to one, and I'm going to try them out and figure out which one I wanted. Walked in the store, immediately had a guy come up to me. His name was Alan. It was an older gentleman. He said, "Welcome to the Microsoft store. What are you here? What can I help you with today?" And I was like, "Actually, I bought a Microsoft Surface. I need a keyboard for it. I don't know which one I wanted." He brought me over to a private station where they had all the keyboard options in every color laid out. Pulled out a Surface for me and he said, "Check it out." And no pressure, didn't provide me with any unnecessary information. Because sometimes salesmen can, like, they want to tell you everything that they know. This guy knew to kind of back off and let me kind of explore my own.
Did you have a Microsoft shirt on at the time?
What's that?
Did you have a Microsoft shirt on at the time?
I did not. I don't own any Microsoft paraphernalia, actually.
I'm a little surprised about this.
And so, I told him, I was like, "Listen, I want to try the touch cover, which is the one we see in the commercial with the different colors." He took it out for me, set it up, showed me how to pull it apart, put it back together, and put it down. I tried it out, and I was amazed. I was like, "Wow, this actually works." I mean, there's a different way to type on it because there's a different feel, but within about 20 seconds, you realize what you need to do differently, and it works flawlessly. And I was like,
"Do you touch type?"
"Yeah, oh yeah, big time."
Like you don't look at the keyboard at all?
No, I'm a home row guy. Yeah. And so I was completely blown away by it. And then I even had my girlfriend was with me. I was like, "I want you to try this." So she was trying it, and he was just asking, "So what do you feel about?" Asking us questions. Just wanted our feedback about how we felt about the product. Not did we want to buy it, but it seemed like he was gonna almost like he was gonna take that feedback and send it to Microsoft. Whether he did that or not, I don't know. But that's how he made us feel. Like we were testing a product and he was collecting the feedback.
Okay.
And then I said, "All right, well let's try the touch cover." And so he took the touch cover out. I tried it, and that's what I ended up buying. The touch cover, as you can see, it's got a trackpad, left and right mouse button, and hard keys. But you know what the selling point for me was? No size difference. It's exactly the same thinness as the touch cover.
Really?
So my concern was if I got the hard keyboard, it would be just as thick as the tablet. Right. That wasn't the case. I mean, it was a difference of a millimeter, which is
no pun intended.
What's that?
I said no pun intended because you said that wasn't the case. And
right. So we tried it out, and I was like, there's no size difference here. I think the touch cover is great, but this is exactly what I want. There's no penalty for me to go this way. So I said, "Let's wrap it up." So he said, "Okay." He took me over to where they were on the rack, asked me if I had any other questions. I said no. And I went to the checkout counter where I worked with another guy who was super friendly, asked us where we were from, did we find everything we need? We had some chit-chat. Wonderful, checkout experience. And there was so much activity going on in the store. I mean, I'm sure you've been to an Apple store on a Sunday, and it's just like an absolute zoo. Yeah. And there was just as much activity going on in this Microsoft store, but it just the store just seemed more well equipped to handle the madness, And I just had a really amazing customer service experience, and I hope that every time I go into a Microsoft store, that's how it is, and something tells me that will be the case. And I hope one day you go to a Microsoft store and you get the same level of service that I did, because I think if you experience what I experienced, and if any of our listeners haven't been here yet either, and they experienced what I did, that it definitely would register with you as this should be a place I want to go if I'm looking for anything Microsoft or Windows based.
Did they happen to have anything that was not Microsoft or Windows based?
Well, they had Xboxes. They had Windows phones.
That's Microsoft based. Was there anything? Did they sponsor any third party anything?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were they had laptops and desktops available in the store from all different makers. I mean, they were all Windows machines, but they were all, Toshiba, Samsung, all kinds of different makes were in there. So you could go in there and buy whatever make and model you wanted that they had. There was no specific vendor that they were attached to.
And they had phones, of course.
Yeah, and that's the thing that they've said is that all Windows phones and every color for every carrier will be available at all Microsoft stores going forward.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter what service you're on or what phone you want or what color, they're going to have it, and you can go there to get it.
Amazing.
That is pretty amazing. And
it's a much different task to take on compared to the Apple Store, where it's one vendor, one product, one set of products.
Right.
You know, it's much different to walk in and have a great variety like that in a relatively small space. You're saying it's a comparable space to a typical Apple Store.
Correct. Yeah, and from what I saw, the Freehold Mall Apple Store is your typical, long rectangle. And the Microsoft Store in the Freehold Mall is not long, it's a short rectangle. So it goes out, basically.
Okay.
So it's not as deep, but it's wider. And that could just be the configuration based on what was available in the mall. But it provided a different layout and a different shopping experience. An Apple Store for the most part is pretty minimal in the sense that it's just a bunch of lab tables with computers, and that was going on at the Microsoft Store. But there were like bars, with stools, and there were different computers set up. There were surfaces set up. There were tables on the outside of the store that were like an Apple Store, and then there were different. There was a Genius type bar in the back. There was a retail counter in the middle. That was the hub, and that was even a bar too. You could check out and sit at a stool. That was cool. And then they actually had a Microsoft Xbox gaming pit in the corner. And the cool thing about that was they had about 4 different gaming stations, and there's a special monitor set up where you can actually move the Xbox monitor around the entire store. So you could start off playing a game in the pit and then move to another end of the store, and that monitor, you can push the monitor around.
So that's a question. For the Xbox, did they have a selection of games?
Absolutely, yeah. A very large selection of games.
That's an example of third party too. Because that's tough.
Yeah.
If you could choose a single word to describe your experience, and you just used minimalist to describe the Apple Store experience, which I agree with. Minimalist is a great way to say that. What would be a word that you would use to describe the Microsoft Store experience?
What is the word I want to say? Give me a second. Empowering.
Okay.
Empowering. And that is because, like I said, this guy, the clerk that I worked with, I guess figured out that I had some technical knowledge. Because I said, I got a Surface already, I want the keyboard, so maybe I indicated he picked up that I had knowledge. And this guy knew when to step back and let me do my thing and let me ask questions, and he knew when to step in and provide information. So I felt empowered because of that.
And this has so much to do with our theory that we've been talking about this idea of relevant customer experience versus relevant service experience, right? The fact that he was aware of the potential of you having a certain amount of knowledge and being flexible, in other words, not trying to knock you over the head with everything he knew when he knew, because he was aware or maybe anticipated that you might be knowledgeable and you were just there to pick something up or get a feel for the particular product that you wanted. That's pretty damn important.
Yeah. And not to be an ageist, but I made the point of mentioning his age because you go to an Apple store, it's mostly like people in their 20s, you know what I mean? And that can lead to a specific customer experience as well. That can even be a turnoff for certain people going into an Apple store. Like if I'm an older person, maybe I don't want to work with a kid, you know what I mean? And or maybe I'm resentful of the fact that I have to work with a young whippersnapper or something. You know what I mean? And in the Microsoft store, it was a much more diverse makeup of employees. Like I said, this guy must have been in his 60s.
Hmm.
And, like I said, I'm not being an ageist, but he absolutely impressed me with his level of service. And we had a very technical oriented conversation about the keyboards and the differences between the two models. And, it didn't seem like he was just reading information from a spec sheet. I mean, he definitely had intimate product knowledge that somebody who spent a lot of time with the product would know. And that really impressed me. It was a huge takeaway for me.
Well, I think diversity is important, and I mean, of course, diversity, primary diversity, we're talking about, differences in things that you are born with, whether it be, the time at which you were born or your ethnic background or all those things. I think that the more diverse an organization is, the more potential it has. I personally believe this, but it's also highly regarded in a scholarly way by studies and lots of leadership theory. So I'm really happy to hear that they're diverse in age. I'm hoping they're also diverse in ethnic background and maybe secondary diversity too, like experiential background. Because all those things lead to potentially a better, more aware experience on the part of the organization. They have differential points of view. They have a non-homogeneous experience internally, which leads to potentially a great experience for a non-homogeneous audience.
Yeah, and I think, looking at the sales floor, there definitely was different ethnic and cultural options represented on the sales team. You get, just a little bit of eavesdropping I did. You could definitely hear that there were different experiential levels being represented or even catered to by the sales staff, which is, that's a huge thing in itself too for a customer, who doesn't know anything. If you're a salesperson that can handle the know nothings to the know everythings, that's huge. And it seemed like the people in the store were really capable of doing that. And like I said, I think this is a new breed, a whole new take on the Apple retail experience. The Apple retail experience is still a good one, but this is I think a better one. And I'm looking forward to you checking it out. Looking forward to our readers and listeners checking it out. And can't wait to hear what everybody thinks. Hopefully everybody feels the same way I do about it.
Yeah, I hope that I would love to as an experiment. While you have your homework for next week, I'll have my homework for next week. I'll try to get to the Freehold Microsoft store. Your homework, of course, is to watch Chiro Dreams of Sushi.
Yes, that will be my homework.
Which we're going to talk about in a future episode.
The last thing I just want to touch on real quickly is, I'm one of the few people with a Surface. I know we don't normally kind of do gadget reviews or anything, but I know you've been anxious to hear a little bit about my experience with the Surface, and I think this ties into the idea of the new Microsoft, because this is their first computing hardware that they've ever sold. And I gotta say, it is. I was expecting a good product, and this far exceeded all of my expectations in every way. In the sense that, like you and I have talked about, I've used the iPad. I own Android tablets. I've used all kinds of different mobile devices, and we acknowledge that there are limitations to a tablet, right? And it's versus a laptop or a desktop.
Yeah, it's almost designed to be a limited experience.
Correct.
Yeah.
The Surface, those limitations they're out the door. It is a tablet that provides a mobile experience, but if you need the creative capabilities of a laptop, it's there. And that to me is like a fully revolutionary product. And the fact that it still is fast, has tremendous battery life, is lightweight, it's well built in its design, combined with the the new Metro interface or the Windows 8 interface, whatever you want to call it, and the touchscreen capabilities that go along with that, it's providing a whole new experience. It's, we talk about all the time, in our line of work, the people that we work with, they buy iPads because they think they're laptop replacements. And it's often a very rude awakening for them when they have that moment where they realize, I should have bought a laptop. And now not every iPad
The
user...
first time you try to do video editing or any real programming work, not that those particular users would mistake a tablet for a laptop, but
just basic content creation in the sense that of word processing. It can be done on an iPad, but is it done well? No, I would definitely say it's not done well.
It's certainly a different experience between a laptop and a tablet for any real work.
Right, and the Surface provides this same experience that you would get on a laptop. I mean, that is something that I didn't expect to be equal. I did not expect that to be a one-to-one experience. The fact that I can open up a PowerPoint presentation and create one from scratch with transitions and templates and the full advanced functionality of PowerPoint, or go into Excel and create pivot tables and all the advanced statistical analysis that goes on in Excel. And the same thing with Word. I mean, I can do all kinds of advanced functionality in Word. That doesn't happen on the different Office suite solutions for iPad or Android. And the fact...
In fact, I mean, it's been news lately in my various Android and mobile podcasts how Microsoft is finally releasing Office creation apps for Android.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And one thing I'm really curious to see is, does it offer the same feature set that they offer on the Microsoft Surface?
I would not be surprised if they didn't, because it seems like it would be modus operandi to keep that functionality squarely within the Windows universe.
Well, I don't know. I mean, yes. I mean, I would see the logic behind that decision as a strategic one, but also from a functionality standpoint, is it possible to offer that same experience that happens on the Surface on an iPad or an Android tablet? That remains to be seen, and that may be the motivating factor.
Come on, Sean.
What?
You can't. Anything can be done. It remains to be seen whether or not it's practical and whether it's politically sensible and whether it is market-wise to do that. It's sort of the same reason why navigation on iPhones through Google Maps was such a contentious issue. Not necessarily because it couldn't happen. Certainly it could have. But it was not practical or affordable. It wasn't practical for Google to allow that to happen because they wanted exclusivity. And it wasn't affordable for Apple to have it happen because they didn't want to pay what Google was asking. So, I mean, I think probably the same backroom discussions probably happened. They could have an identical experience. They could have an identical experience between a PC version of Office and a Mac version of Office. They just choose not to for various reasons.
Well, that's a whole other story in itself. But you're right. I absolutely get what you're at, and it'll be, like I said. I think it's great. I'm actually a huge supporter of the fact that they're releasing Office on these additional platforms. Microsoft, that's another thing that's been going on, is they've been embracing alternative platforms. The new Smart Glass application is available on Windows Phone, Windows 8, Android, and iOS. They've released games on iOS. They've released SkyDrive for iOS and Android. I mean, all kinds of different application offerings are available on the different mobile platforms for Microsoft. And the Microsoft of 5 years ago would have not done that. And I think that's awesome that they're making that change.
It's definitely. I mean, I have said this many times on this podcast. We live in a really exciting time for technology. And all of these changes, these rapid changes happening with Microsoft and in the other ecospheres, we all benefit greatly from the innovation and the challenges and the solutions that have come out recently.
Absolutely. And, I do agree. I mean, I'm very excited about what Microsoft's doing. I'm very excited about what Google's doing with the Nexus tablets. I haven't really had a chance to get a hands-on experience with a Nexus 7 or the new 10, but I would love to. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of ice cream sandwich, and honeycomb before it was also something I saw was a good solution. I love to see what Google does with Android, and like you said,
I'm very lucky to not be in a contract with T-Mobile. T-Mobile's my carrier, but I have a no contract where I have unlimited text minutes and whatever. And I'm very tempted to go and get the Nexus 4 because even without subsidy or without the monetary support from a carrier, it's only like $300 to get a Nexus 4.
That's
very
amazing.
Affordable. I mean, I think I'm going to jump from my current phone to this other phone.
That's awesome. And I'm looking to do that myself too with Windows Phone. I'm thinking of maybe going off contract myself, even switching to T-Mobile as well. Something that's I'm thinking about. I haven't really made a decision yet. But like you said, it's just another. Because I'm excited about the technology, I want to use it. I'm somebody that really loves to get their hands on new things, trying them out, and then being able to, like I said, I've had the Surface now for 2 weeks. I brought it to work for the first time this week. I had one faculty member who knew I was getting it, was beating my door down to see it. I got to see this thing. Showed it to him. Blew his mind to the point where I personally knew that the Pro solution that's coming out in January is the product that he needs, but for him to be able to see what the tablet experience is with Windows 8 in the portable form factor absolutely blew his mind. I had another faculty member who didn't even know what Windows 8 was, let alone the fact that Microsoft made a tablet, and showed her what was going on. Her mind completely blown. These are people, though, that are Windows users, though. Let's get that. I'm not converting anybody here. But, two people of different technology interest level. One who's a guy that follows Microsoft news closely, and another woman who doesn't think that anything beyond XP is necessary. You know what I mean? So to have the first two people I showed it to be blown away gets me excited, you know what I mean? And to be able to try new products and to match them up with people in our line of work as solutions for them, that's something I love doing. That's one of my favorite parts of our job. And I know that's something that you do all the time with software and open source solutions, and I do the same thing too. But when it comes to a tangible piece of hardware, that's where I get the most excited. And
it's interesting that you say that. One of my favorite questions in my day-to-day work is, do you know of an application that does X? And I've had a lot of conversations recently about tablets. People are always asking me, I need to get a laptop, which one should I get? Or I've been hearing a lot about tablets, and I know that they're becoming more mature. What do you think? And you might be surprised to find out that I do not necessarily always say, yeah, go get a Nexus. I often say that, but we usually have a dialogue where we talk about what the rest of their ecosphere is, and what other products they're comfortable with, and what they're going to be doing day to day, how familiar they are with computing in general,
right,
how much money they had to spend, etc. And I'm glad that there are other options besides Android and iOS to offer, especially for somebody who's been with Windows for their entire computing life. They're probably going to be very, very comfortable moving to a Surface from that experience.
One thing I am excited to get my hands on, I don't know if I'll buy one, but I know you'll probably buy one, is the new Chromebook.
Yeah, I have hovered over the purchase, but I have two of them now, and they're fine, and I use them. I live in a one-room studio apartment, so it's not as though I need two Chromebooks now.
No.
I'm on a desktop. I have a computer hooked up to my TV. I have two Chromebooks. I have a tablet. I really don't need another machine.
Well, I'm in the same boat, man. I have a MacBook Pro. I have a Windows laptop. I have an Android tablet. I have the Microsoft Surface now.
Yeah, but you have a house.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's my girlfriend and I, and she's got her own set of devices, and we both have desktop computers. And when I bought the Surface, she's like, "You're buying another tablet? What do you need another tablet for?" And I'm like, "You don't understand. It's Windows 8. I need to have this."
I feel that way about the Chromebook. I would love to have one, but I mean, I have not. What I would really love to do, if I felt like I could do it effectively, is like turn off all my machines and just use a Chromebook for like a week or a month. A month would be tough.
I did that. I did that with Windows 8. I had to go to training, off-site training, for a week, and I was allowed to bring a laptop. And I purposely brought a laptop that had a touchpad with limited touch capabilities. Like, I just wanted to do a traditional kind of upgrade experience with no advanced hardware.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see what it would be like using Windows 8 on a traditional laptop. And I did it for a week. And that's what I used for 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And that is what sold me on Windows 8 as a proof of concept. And I just did that, because Windows 8, even though it just launched in October, it's been available for 2 or 3 weeks before its launch. And that's where my training was in that buffer. And, there were people in the training that were like, I saw you, it was obvious you were using it for the first time, and within a few minutes, you figured out all the tricks very quickly, and you were able to browse and take advantage of the hot corners and everything. And it made it actually, for the people that watched me use it, it made them hopeful for their Windows 8 experience, because they were like, well, if it was that quick for Sean to learn it, I'm definitely going to be able to adapt to it as well. But I did that exact same thing you're talking about, where I forced myself to use it. I wanted to see how battle ready it was, and I would love to do it with the new Chromebook. I want to see, for $249, what are they offering? I got to see that.
I mean, I think that the challenge in adopting a Chromebook for everyday, day and night use, of course, I would still use my phone, etc.
Sure.
The challenge in adopting a Chromebook is that everything you do has to be in the browser.
Sure.
Everything. So, there are a few things that I do. I open up applications all day long. I have the 365 Sketches project, for example. I would not be able to do the work that I do for that project in a browser. I could possibly do something if I break my own rules, but I'm saying without opening up a good design application, my design work would suffer, because there are not great cloud-based design applications.
Sure.
Some people would argue that Aviary has all the tools that I would need, but it's not open source. But anyway, it's a challenge, and I do video editing for my work. We do seminars every week that spits out a video. How do I solve that problem? Easily. I mean, there are online video editing tools, but they're just not great. And
right.
It means, uploading video using clumsy editing online tools and then downloading the video. And downloading is an issue because there's no hard drive present. There's no real hard drive present. So all these questions, storage exists and applications exist, but not all functionality is there yet. So I think if I was going to do a month-long experiment, it would have to be like during the summer, where I wouldn't be required to use big boy tools.
Right.
That's a sexist thing to say.
Grown-up tools.
So it's, I need to have certain things available to me certainly during the work year, which would make a Chromebook really difficult to use. But using it for most of the time, most of the work that I do is web-based. Most of the work that I do is web-based. And if I can get to Netflix, which is actually not available yet on the new Chromebook, that's basically the reason why I don't have Linux installed everywhere, is because of Netflix. Sad, disgusting.
It is.
Anyway.
Well, the thing that I'm afraid of, just to kind of wrap up that discussion about the Chromebook, the thing I'm afraid of is that the Chromebook, the new one, is going to fall into the same trap that netbooks fell into, in the sense that it's underpowered and you're limited in what you're capable of doing. And I jumped on the netbook bandwagon. I had one, and I was like, yeah, it works, but
But it's like a toy.
Yeah, and I would hate for the Chromebook to fall into that same trap, because it seems like it's a well thought out solution. Like, Google's really considered everything that you can do with it and wouldn't release a product that would be substandard in anything that you're supposed to be able to do with it. You know what I mean?
I can only tell you, have you ever owned a Chromebook?
No, but I've used Chromium. Or whatever.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
I use Chrome every day, but I mean, with the Chromebook, the specific two devices that they put out, the Samsung and the Acer, there is an issue with offering hardware at that price, and that issue is that quality suffers because you're not paying an extra $100 for a great touchpad. You're paying a lack of a premium for a lack of premium hardware.
Mm-hmm.
So the camera's not great, the screen is not great, the keyboard feels cheap, the trackpad or the touchpad is clumsy, like it doesn't track exactly as well as a MacBook Pro, for example. But I'm not paying $2,000, So from a software perspective, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's relatively quick. It's secure. It's up to date the minute you open it up. I could hand it to you and not be worried about it. And I mean, if I didn't know you, I could hand it to you and say, here, use mine, and just close it and open it. You'd have to log in, and everything would be fine. Because you log in with your Gmail account and I log in with mine. It's sort of like you walking up to a desk machine at Princeton and logging in with your NetID. When you walk away from that machine, it's no longer yours. And you didn't leave anything on it, So it's an amazing experience from a minimalism perspective. And I am a minimalist. I really want to live in the cloud. I really want to leave this desktop behind. But I'm just not there yet. There are a couple things that I really need that are on this machine, and they're not in the cloud. They're on this machine. They're on this hard drive. Photos, six years of photos. Who am I gonna pay to store gigabytes and gigabytes of photos?
No.
Video? Am I gonna pay to store innumerable, a terabyte of video? So until prices continue to go down to the point where it doesn't make sense to have a local hard drive, and speeds go up, so it doesn't make sense to consider the bandwidth bottleneck that occurs on my desktop, between my desktop and the hard drive, because it's slower than the speed of the internet. Then we can talk. But until then, the cloud is still sort of a dream-like thing. We're not quite there yet.
No, we're not. And hopefully Google and/or Microsoft will be the ones to bring us there, because they're the two right now with the most advanced architecture in terms of cloud offerings, and it'll be exciting to see where they both go in the future.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that we had this conversation about Microsoft, because I wanted to be clear that while I have philosophical differences, especially with the historical view that Microsoft has taken between proprietary and more open views, and I certainly have qualms with certain things that they have done in their history. Generally speaking, I'm very respectful and very thankful to Microsoft for their part in my personal computing history.
Well, I'm glad we had this discussion because, I've known you for the better part of probably 10 years now, 9 years. And I feel like I got to know you a little bit better tonight. I know you pretty well, but I feel like I got to know you even better based on this, talking about something that isn't something that you really like to spend time talking about, I'm sure, day in and day out, especially in a positive light, maybe.
Yeah, Microsoft is, I guess for me, Microsoft is almost like ether. It's sort of like it's there and it happened and it's almost like invisible, but it's nice to bring it to the surface and talk about, bring it to the surface. And talk about, its former impact, its recent impact, and its future impact.
Yeah, and I'm excited to learn that you're kind of thinking about an Xbox. I'd love to talk to you about that offline, about what that could do for you, because I don't think you realize, not even putting the gaming thing aside, how well it would probably fit into your life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of room left on the table in front of my TV, but we'll talk about it. What I'd like to do is maybe I was thinking about this as you were talking, and as we were talking before about adopting a specific device for a length of time. I was thinking that maybe we could just spend an hour together sometime soon and exchange. After this is, of course, after you're satiated with the Surface. I could borrow your Surface in your presence for like an hour, and you could have the Nexus 7 for like an hour, and just spend time sort of exploring that.
You know what? That's awesome. Let's do that. That's a great idea, and we can make that a discussion topic for future episodes. Because that's definitely customer service. We're taking ourselves out of our comfort zones. We're using products and services that we don't normally would use or own. I think that's a great direction for us to go in the future as an additional topic to discuss. So let's absolutely do that.
Let's do that.
Okay, cool.
Great.
All right, you have a good night.
All right, thanks, Sean. Have a good one. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good.
Bye.
See you.